Hi, everybody. This is about the 20th time, and I'm only barely exaggerating. I've tried to record this video. It has been a comedy of errors. There have been multiple glitches, dogs barking. Mostly it's been user error as I try to get a handle on this whole async learning. But anyway, here I am. Hopefully this is the one. I wanted to give you this introduction to semiotics. You've done the reading, I hope, in the textbook about semiotics, but I wanted to help you out here understanding a little bit more of what semiotics is about. It's important for this class because the essays you write are all involved with semiotics. So I hope this helps, and I hope I make it through without a glitch. Here we go. So for this, you might notice for this presentation, you saw Barbie on the previous slide. Here's the Barbie movie. I'm going to use Barbie as a reference for us to understand this process of semiotic analysis. If you've seen the movie, that's great. If you haven't seen the movie, it's not going to affect you too much. So we'll be using the Barbie movie and a couple other examples to really sort of dive into semiotics. Couple definitions here. First of all, culture, as it's defined in the textbook and in other places, is the overall traditions and values, a system of values and traditions shared by a group of people. So, as an example, as an American, you might have a set of values and traditions that are different if you were European. So, in America, we celebrate Thanksgiving, for instance, or the 4th of July. These are uniquely American traditions. We have this idea in America that one can pull themselves up by their bootstraps and succeed, the idea of the American dream. Real or not, we have that value in our society as a tradition. Now, it can be a big thing, a big culture can be big, up to worldwide culture, but culture can be big like America, or it can be a smaller group, like a geographic region, a section of America, the South, or even smaller like Tennessee or California in terms of California's unique culture and traditions. Or it can be even smaller, like Native Hawaiians, who have a very unique culture different from all other people who live in Hawaii. Or pickleball players, who are even a smaller group of people that have their own set of values and traditions. Or furries. Don't look that up. Don't dive too deeply into that. But that's a very small but very unique culture that they have their own set of, I guess it's called values or traditions. So it can be very large or very small. Mass culture, then, is elements of our culture that influence a large society. So, for instance, Hollywood, this idea of Hollywood, not as a place or a location, but rather as an idea. Hollywood influences everything in our society in terms of content. They create content that then has an impact on society, like the Barbie movie, or like Oppenheimer, or like any movie that becomes very, very popular, the Marvel movies, for instance. They have an influence on larger society. The way people think, what they are interested in, what they value, Hollywood can have a great impact on that. And perfect evidence of that is again, the Barbie movie. In the textbook, they talk a lot about signs. Here's a literal sign. It says stop. And this tells us, this is a sign that has meaning to us, symbolic meaning. Of its own, it means nothing. It's a series of white scribbles on a red background. But what it means to us symbolically is to, step on our brake, come to a stop, look around, check for safety if you're driving in your car. Also, it goes beyond that. If you're taking a standardized test, for instance, like the SAT or an exam to get into a certain program, you might see a stop sign at the bottom of the page in your test, which means stop. You get that. You stop there. You don't go forward. So that it transcends just driving to other parts of society. So that is a sign, literally a sign, that has meaning. So as we go forward, then a sign, and there are two kinds, associated and differentiated. A sign in terms of semiotics is anything that bears meaning. And you see here Alan from the Barbie movie. I'm going to use him, the character of Alan, the doll of Alan, as an example here. But Alan bears meaning in the Barbie movie. And he's a doll. He's a doll, Barbie doll. You could have bought Alan in the 70s or whatever. and he's a friend of Ken and a friend of Barbie. Um, he, even in the Barbie movie, says he can wear Ken's clothes. So he's, in doll terms, he's the same size. In movie terms, he's, the same character. He can wear Ken's outfit. So he's like Ken. He is associated with Ken. And an associated signs means signs that are similar. So Ken and Alan are similar in that way. However, they're very different. It's this idea of differentiated signs are signs that are different from each other. So Ken and Alan are similar, but they're very different. Alan represents one part of male society. Ken represents another part of male culture or society. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. But that Alan bears meaning. Ken bears meaning in the Barbie movie. And then semiotics is the study of these signs. It's a study of how these signs have meaning and how they relate to the overall culture of either America or other things, like we said, other parts of culture. So let's talk about Alan really briefly. Alan in the Barbie movie is a male doll who really is, for lack of a better term, an ally for the female characters. He supports them. He wants them to feel empowered. He is a 21st century male in some regards. He may appear meek, but then he really is actually strong. If you've seen the fight scene, he has a lot of capabilities, and he's very supportive of the female characters in the movie as they try to gain power. Ken, on the other hand, when he's in the full throes of his patriarchy, is the exact opposite. Ken is a misogynist. Ken is demeaning to women. Ken is seeking to put himself in a place above the female Barbies. And so while Alan and Ken are both male, they're similar. They're both characters from Barbie. They're both dolls, ultimately. They're very different in the ways they approach the world, and therefore we can understand that they maybe represent the way culture, masculinity, the culture of masculinity sort of impacts our society. This fight between what people have called toxic masculinity, whereas maybe new age masculinity that's more empathetic and more conscious of what a woman's role should be and could be, an ally, in other words. And so semiotics is what I just did. I just semiotically analyzed the Barbie movie in respect to Alan and Ken. They bear meaning, and all it means to analyze them semiotically is to think about it. What might that meaning be? What are the signs like? What are they associated with? And what are they different from? Back to our street sign metaphor. Here's another element of street signs that you're very familiar with, I'm sure. This is a little more complicated. This is a more complex sign, if you will. The stop sign means one thing and one thing only. A stop light can mean three different things. It can mean stop. Obviously, we all agree red means stop. Green means go. We get that. If the light's green, we go. We get a little confused with yellow. Some of us believe that yellow means you hit your brake and you slow down. Others of us believe that yellow signifies to, put your foot on the gas and try to get through that light before it turns red. So it's a little more complicated, but it still has meaning. We still understand what that means. And the literal meaning of these are literally just lights. They're colors that we can see. Most of us can see just fine. But it's a symbolic meaning here that's critical to public safety and so forth. And here, of course, is the misogynist Ken in the throes of the patriarchy. So the system then is the code or network within which a sign functions. So Ken is a sign in the Barbie movie. He's a sign. The system within which Ken functions would be, you could say it's the Mattel system. It's the Barbie system. That would be a very simple way to explain it. But if you got more complex, you could say, again, Ken is a representative of a certain kind of masculinity. So he functions within this sign of what it means to be a man in our culture. And this little chart here, which may give you tremors because you had to deal with it during you getting your driver's exam. These are a multitude of street signs that we have to follow, and this is the network within which the stop sign and the stoplight and all these other street signs function. It's a system of traffic advisories, where to turn, where not to turn, how fast to go, etc. So this is the system of signs. So if the stop sign is a sign, it functions within this larger system. And then the denotation, which is a word you may have heard before, is the literal meaning of a word or sign. So Ken is literally a hunk of plastic shaped like some semblance of a male. That's literally what Ken is. And in the movie, Ken is literally defined by Barbie. He's just a character who doesn't have a lot of power. Connotation, then, is the symbolic objective meaning of a word. So Ken is more than just a hunk of plastic in the Barbie movie. He comes to represent symbolically the idea of the so-called toxic masculinity, just like a stop sign is a piece of metal with painting on it and letters, meaningless in and of itself without the symbolic attachment or the connotated meaning, which again is very important. Then abductive reasoning, which is perhaps the hardest part of all this to get, is not as hard as it sounds, because it's just a way that we use logic to seek a likely explanation for what we're seeing. So we see Ken singing this song about being a man, I'm Ken, and if we use abductive reasoning to realize Ken is a sign, the most likely explanation for his song is that he's feeling sort of alone and trapped in this idea of what masculinity is, and he's choosing to express that in perhaps the worst way possible, which means he's a product of this culture that raises men to be a certain way. So abductive reasoning is just taking all the things you see that are signs and figuring out why they're doing that. And that's semiotic analysis. This is from the textbook. I'm just going to read this yellow part here. For a semiotician, and that's you, by the way, that's you, me, that's what we're doing in this class. You are all semioticians now. Congratulations. Is one who practices semiotic analysis. A shirt, a haircut, a TV series, anything at all can be taken as a sign, a message to be decoded and analyzed to discover its meaning. You're going to be decoding and analyzing to discover meaning. A good example of this would be, and we do this all the time. You do it all the time. It's something every day. That's how we learn to survive. So if you are at school or at your place of work and there's a person that you perhaps see every day, you don't have a lot of contact, but you see them every day, and they're always impeccably dressed, clothes are clean, ironed, hair is perfect, hygiene is really good, teeth are brushed, all this stuff, and they look like they really take some time to put themselves together every morning. You might judge that to be, this person really cares about their appearance, this person is incredibly organized. You might see signs in their appearance that point to you making some judgments about them. And then one day they show up and they're wearing dirty flip-flops, their jeans are torn in ways that aren't fashionable, their t-shirt's kind of stained, and they're looking kind of down, they're shuffling instead of walking like purposefully. You might see that as a sign that something is amiss in that person's life. Maybe they've had some sadness, they've dealt with a family tragedy, or they've had financial issues or something's happened to that person's life because they looked this way every other day and now they look this way. And so you might conclude that something bad has happened to that person. That's looking at the sign, something that bears meaning, this change in the person, and saying, oh, here's the meaning. You're using abductive reasoning to decide on the meaning. You may be right. You may be wrong. It may be a spirit day at school where they're dress down day at school, and they're wearing these clothes purposefully to participate in a spirit event, a school spirit event. That's very different than our original, interpretation. Doesn't mean that we're bad or wrong for getting it wrong, because we use logic to assume something, and sometimes that turns out to be true, and sometimes it doesn't. But the point is to use that reasoning. People who grow up in households of alcoholics are very good at pointing out signs. So if you're one of your caregivers is an alcoholic, and you come home and you see an empty whiskey bottle in the trash, you might then assume that's a sign that you're going to have a very bad night, or that it's going to be unpredictable or chaotic. And that would be a very logical assumption. Perhaps that empty whiskey bottle went down the drain and the person that you're worried about is actually turning the leaf. That'd probably be very rare, But that idea of signs, you're looking at signs, you're decoding what they mean, and you're trying to reason out what that meaning is and how that impacts you, or in our case, how that impacts larger culture. Hope that is understandable. This is yet another example of how signs are used to make assumptions. So tide pools, which is of course in Monterey, those of you who are in Monterey area probably know all about tide pools. And scientists use signs, they use semiotic analysis to understand how tide pools work. And in this case, it's symbiotic analysis, different word, but means the same kind of idea. The symbiotic relationships that animals have in tide pools is very important for judging how the overall health of the ecosystem is. So the marine biologist might see that there are fewer sea stars than there should be in a certain area. And that may be a sign to them that there's a problem in the ecosystem, that there are bigger things happening here than just a few starfish disappearing, that might be a reason. So scientists use signs all the time to try to make conclusions about what they're looking at and how those signs may relate to a bigger picture. Here's one more example of this. This is a not too old, actually, advertisement from Mr. Clean, the cleaning company, and this says, this Mother's Day, get back to the job that really matters. And of course, the signs here are there's a mother and her daughter helping. Mother's helping the daughter learn to clean. The daughter's pointing out a spot she missed. But what do these really mean here? Like, let's get back to the job that really matters sort of implies that the mother and the daughter are doing the traditional woman's role, that the real, like, this woman might work out of the home, but the job that really matters is teaching her daughter to clean. So you see this sign and you go, whoa, that's a really intense sign. And it might be part of a system of gender roles and how gender roles are defined in our country traditionally, and how Mr. Clean is perhaps trying to appeal to a certain segment of our population. Maybe this is an ad that would run in certain parts of the country and not in others. So it's a sign that you could make some assumptions about, that even in the modern era, we're still stuck in this idea that women should have certain roles in our society as opposed to others. That's just another example. Here's yet one more, semiotic analysis. There are signs in this image. This is, of course, the LGBTQ plus flag, and each one of these colors bears meaning, and they're part of a system of pride that a certain community wants to show and display. It's very controversial. Some people don't agree that all these colors should be on there. Some people don't agree the flag should fly at all. So it's a controversial system of signs, but it is still a sign. And in terms of how it's related to this sign, here you see the previous sign, these are very traditional gender roles and what the world looked like 100 years ago maybe, and what people would like to see it still look like. And here you see a sign of perhaps the more modern world, this idea of change in terms of how we represent gender and what we accept or don't accept in our country. And this, then you could say these are both a part of the same system in some ways, and you have a transition here between an older system and a newer system, which makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. Some people applaud it, some people feel different about it. Very quickly, just going forward, almost done. There's a show called, so if I were to ask you, for instance, to do a symbiotic analysis on a television show, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm getting away from Barbie here real quick. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a cop show. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's no longer being produced, but it is a show that was on for some time, and sorry, I had to pause there, but I didn't want to give up on this video. So Brooklyn Nine-Nine ran from 2013 to 2021, and it followed the exploits of these cops. So if I were to ask you to analyze this film, or this TV series, this is the kind of process you might go for. We're not going to watch the clip, but you can certainly find clips of Brooklyn Nine-Nine on YouTube if you want to watch it. So Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's what's considered a cop show. It's part of a system of cop shows that have been on show, television for as long as there's been television. So the denotative meaning, that means the literal meaning is actually it's a show about cops, about a group of officers, and they do dumb stuff. They get into jams, they cause troubles, and these are all signs. The main character is sort of egotistical, aloof. They're all based on sort of tropes. There's the strong female cop who resents the male cops and is always trying to prove herself. There's the angry cop. There's the lazy cop. They're all sort of tropes or signs of things that we are used to seeing on television. So it's a single camera comedy. That means that the way it uses the camera, and as opposed to a multi-camera comedy. So it's single camera. There are lots of single camera comedies around. Like an example of not a single camera comedy would be The Big Bang Theory or a sitcom like that, where there's multiple cameras. They do all the acting at one time, and multiple cameras film them in different locations. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is filmed more like a movie. So that's the denotative meaning, literally what it is. But the connotative significance of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, we have to look at related signs. So there are lots of cop shows on TV. There are lots of workplace comedies on TV. Barney Miller is an old show from the 70s. Hill Street Blues, Dragnet's a show from the 60s. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the Law and Order franchise. These are all cop shows. They're all part of the system of signs. They're all similar in some ways to Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The Office is not a cop show, but it's a workplace comedy. These are all workplace shows. They're all shows centered around work. And so that's another system. So the related signs would be these things. Brooklyn Nine-Nine belongs to this association. And then the differences you might see in these signs is most cop shows like Law and Order are serious, and they tackle pretty heavy issues. They're difficult to watch sometimes. They have often based on real life crimes or these terrible things that happen, mysteries that have to be solved. There are a few cop television comedy shows. Barney Miller was an old show, but they tend to they don't tend to tackle serious issues and funny issues. So they're more just funny, lighthearted cop show comedies where the criminals are all sort of, likable in some way. And like the old Andy Griffith show with a town drunk who locks himself in the jail. These are all sort of comedy. They don't tackle serious issues. They're very lighthearted. And that's a difference. There's a differentiating signs. Whereas Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a bit unique in that sense. It's a combination of a workplace comedy and a traditional cop show that occasionally tackled heavy issues like police corruption or the sexuality of the characters. The man here on the screen is the captain of the department. He's a black gay cop, and that is dealt with often in the show and the struggles that he has had to go through to get to the position of power that he's in. The character on the left, the female character, comes out as bisexual during the show. And so there are these heavy issues to deal with sexuality, with power structures in traditional police departments. Yet at the same time, it's this silly, sort of campy comedy. So it's a very different show than perhaps some of the other cop shows that have been around. And now we talk about abductive reasoning. So here's what happened once the George Floyd incident happened, and the movement that followed it, the Black Lives Matter movement that sort of came together, coalesced around that unfortunate incident, led to what is called the defund the police era. And there became a lot of there's been latent anxiety against the police for years, but it kind of came to a head, and many people in this country sort of rebelled, and were crying to change the whole system of law enforcement. And so there was this conflict between the serious nature of police work, which is definitely a serious job, and the comedic workplace comedy trope. It led to this big kind of issue for the Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and how do you proceed? And they struggled to maintain a lighthearted tone in the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter movement, despite the fact that they had a very diverse cast with an African-American leader, and viewers sort of were had a harder time watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and it's a perfect example of how situations, comedies, and public opinions in the real world, situations and public opinions in the real world can impact this idea of entertainment. The whole Black Lives Matter movement made Brooklyn Nine-Nine um, almost impossible to continue, because they couldn't continue filming a funny cop show in an era of these uprisings and rebellions against that whole system. It ceased to be as easy and funny for both the audience and for the actors. So this is abductive reasoning. So what is the most likely cause for Brooklyn Nine-Nine's ceasing to exist? Might be this idea that within the system it functioned, cop shows became suddenly more difficult to produce, particularly comedies. There was suddenly nothing funny about Brooklyn Nine-Nine for many people. So that's an example of how you might semiotically analyze a piece of culture like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. If you look at Barbie, back to the Barbie movie, our culture was greatly impacted by the Barbie movie. People hated it, people loved it. There was very little in between. Very few people said, it's okay. It was more I loved it or I hated it. A lot of people refused to go see it. And those are all signs of how that particular topic, female empowerment, this idea of misogyny and the patriarchy, all good examples of how those things are really still very tender subjects in our society. And through abductive reasoning, we can discover perhaps why that is, just like we did here with the Black Lives Matter movement and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Okay, that's the end of this presentation. I made it through with just one pause. I'm sorry if it was glitchy, but I'm not doing it again. This is the 21st time is the charm. If you have any questions on this, as always, feel free to reach out, and we'll move forward. And your next essay is going to be to semiotically analyze a consumer artifact, and we'll be talking about that at another point. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you all are doing well. Bye-bye.